Hello everyone, I am Germain Payen, professor at the University of Lille in France and contributor to a new book that you can see here. This book is called Seleukid Ideology, Creation, Reception and Response. This is the first volume of a new series called Seleukid Perspectives, which is aimed at creating new perspectives in the history of this great Hellenistic dynasty, the Seleucids. This first volume was edited by Coşkun and Richard Wenghofer, and it is published by Steiner. My own contribution in this first volume is about the Artaxiad kingdom of Greater Armenia in the Seleukid Empire, from submission to domination. Well, it is written in French under the title Le royaume Artaxiade dans l'empire Séleucide, dominé à dominant. So this is a story of Seleucid ideologies, but more about the reception and response to it, because it is the Seleucid ideology and culture in the eyes of a peripheral state in Armenia. So to sum up my point, I will first introduce the topic. So in the aftermath of Alexander the Great's death, the Seleucids managed to conquer and keep most of the Asian part of his empire. This huge territory included in the Caucasian mountain range the Armenian region, which was a part of the Parthian Empire beforehand. You can see it here, so in the nowadays Caucasia. This paper aims at evaluating the political and cultural relations between the Seleucid center and this Armenian periphery of the empire, in the years following the latest first declaration of autonomy, so that at the beginning of the 2nd century BC. Ancient Armenia is still mostly unknown to modern scholars due to the lack of literary evidence, so this paper may also serve as an introduction of this part of history in the Hellenistic period. Broadly speaking, the Armenian region seems to have been a differentiated space before Alexander's conquest already, with linguistic and cultural specificities. It was and remained autonomous, at least in the reality, after the first Seleukid king the first Seleukid ruler took charge of the Asian domains, under the local ruler named Orontid, created a dynasty, an Armenian dynasty named the Orontids. Nonetheless, the Orontids formally recognized the Seleucids as their suzerain. In the beginning of the 2nd century BCE, Armenia became an independent region, but the circumstances of this event remain mostly obscure to us. What we know is that the famous Seleucid king Antiochos III, who ruled between 223 and 187 BC, managed to strengthen the dynastic Seleucid hold on Armenia, appointing new rulers in this region in the late 3rd century BC. Then, in 190, Antiochos lost a major battle and a very large conflict against the Roman Republic, losing the Anatolian lands as a result of the ensuing peace treaty. It is seemingly in the same context that the recently appointed Armenian rulers were recognized as legitimate and independent kings by Rome itself, Artaxias in Greater Armenia and Zariadris in Sophene. You can see these two parts of Armenia here. The Greater Armenia is a major part of Armenia in the east, while Sophene was just bordering on the west. So Greater Armenia is the best known of these two regions, these two kingdoms, and thus the subject of this paper. In the subsequent decades, the relations between the Artaxiad kings and the Seleukid throne fluctuated between dormant hostility, sometimes even open conflict, and ruler-to-ruled domination. The reign of Antiochos IV, in particular, saw a brief return of Greater Armenia within the Seleucid control, immediately followed by an open conflict between the king of Greater Armenia, still Artaxias, and Antiochos' successor. The Artaxiad state took a rather unclear place in the Asian geopolitical order, in the periphery of the Seleukid Empire, but also partly integrated to the Anatolian political scene. This situation was reflected by the cultural background and ideological politics of the kingdom, as well as by the political choices made by its dynasts. More precisely, Artaxias chose to depict himself as a descendant of the Orontid dynasty, the old dynasty that ruled over Armenia before him, rather than as a former Seleucid agent. He also took Aramean language and not Greek as the language of the dynastic authority, and possibly forced a linguistic unification of his lands. All these were signs of deference towards Armenian and Achaemenid, so that's Iranian, roots, rather than Hellenistic or Greek ones, taking distances from the Seleucid cultural and ideological ground. Despite this, Artaxias managed to integrate the circle of kings shaping the political realm in the Anatolian peninsula in a very Hellenistic way, very Hellenistic fashion, very close to what the Seleucids and other kingdoms used, forging alliances and ensuring treaties as the most stable Eastern regional power. In the second half of the 2nd century BCE, of course, the Seleucid power progressively declined. Then the status of the king of Greater Armenia evolved. It also evolved in the contact of new powers trying to fill the power vacuum, mostly Rome in the west, the Parthian Empire to the east, and the Pontic kingdom in northern Anatolia. At an unknown date, in the late 2nd century BCE, Greater Armenia became a satellite power of the Parthian Empire. But the early 1st century saw an unexpected turn of events, a turn of tides, we should say, which shed new light on Armenian history. After a quick political unification of Armenia, the new king, Tigranes II, managed to regain an autonomous status, then independence, and finally began an imperialistic policy. He took control of Antioch, the old Seleucid capital, putting a first end to the Seleucid dynasty and replacing the Seleucids in Syria. The development of an Armenian empire, although short-lived, created an opportunity to draw on Seleucid cultural and ideological material, while still mixing these with proper Achaemenid traditions as well as Arsacid or Parthian influence. This political shift saw the translation of Near Eastern political center from Antioch to Tigranocerta, the newly founded capital of this Armenian empire. This impacted the Mediterranean balance of powers and prepared the division of former Seleucid central regions between the Romans and the Parthians. While Armenia, which did not disappear for a long time, fell back to a status of peripheral state between two greater powers. Now this is just a quick overview of my main points. If you want to know better or to discover the rest of the contributions in this book, I invite you to, well, buy the book, but first also maybe go see a website. I can give you here the URL address. So, thank you, goodbye.